Hi everyone, it's day 75 of the Vendée Globe, and what an amazing moment in the race. On Monday, we looked at the respective weather strategies for Louis Burton and Charlie Dalin, and it's no surprise that Louis Burton's position in the west has started to reap the benefits of being in slightly better breeze. The big question in my mind is which side of the Azores to go, jibe north or continue around the high pressure south, passing to the south of the Azores. To help me unpick the options and to consider the final days at sea for the leaders, I'm joined by former Vendée Globe sailor and a Mocha world champion, Mike Golding. Hi, Mike.
Hello, hi.
So you've been in this situation in 2004-5 within the top three, heading to Les Sables d'Olonne with a boat capable of winning. If you were in the mindset of these leading trio, what would you be saying to yourself?
Well, I mean, it is so close. It has, and really the race is a little more open than just the first three. With the weather forecast has been not very good the last week or so, and the reliability of it is questionable. So it's difficult to pick a winner. I mean, it just really is hard. If I were looking at it right now, I think I'd prefer to be where Louis is, out to the left, a little further away from that high pressure center, only because he can always put his bows up a little more and take a little more speed.
Yep.
And you generally seeing that on the sort of longer performance figures, you're seeing a slightly higher speed from him. So, but having said that, Charlie's still ahead, and he's got a potentially quicker boat.
And just thinking about the sort of risk versus reward. I mean, in that situation, are you thinking about I'm going to win this race, or are you thinking I've still got 1,500 miles or so to go? I need to get across the line. What's the sort of the strategy in your mind?
I think the top 4 or 5 boats are going to be going for it. I can't believe at this stage, having come so far, and it is true. You know yourself from 2004, boats can have failures right in the very last moment. I mean, I lost my keel on the way across the bay. So
Yeah.
90 miles from the finish, and you lose your keel. But and others have lost rigs and so on and so forth. So anything can happen. The boats are tired, the equipment's tired, you're tired, mistakes can be made. So all of those things notwithstanding, I think the top 3 or 4 boats are hyper competitive individuals. They'll want to win, and I don't think it will be super nerve-wracking to be on one of those boats right now, because
Yeah.
you know that you are capable of winning the race if you make the right choices. Some of the choices have been made. The left and right choice right now has been kind of made, but it's not unchangeable. There's enough miles to go that you could still swap your position. And so really, I mean, it's really hard to call. And the general commentary on the internet has been pretty much right. There's never been a Vendée where the boats are so closely packed and where things could change so easily.
Yep. Yep. Now, Louis Burton has been consistently attacking since the doldrums. And in fact, for me, along with Damien Seguin, he's been a sort of standout for the race. I mean, if you think, back in the Southern Ocean, he was there up the top of his mast off Macquarie Islands. He was at one stage 900 miles behind the leader. And yet,
Yeah.
he's pulled himself back. He's since the doldrums, he's been attacking consistently, putting himself in the strongest pressure. He's sailing the boat that won the race in 2016. Do you think he can win?
Damien?
Louis Burton, sorry.
Louis, sorry. Well, I mean, yes, I do. Quite simply, he can win. The strange thing about this race is the newer generation boats haven't had it all their own way. And in fact, the previous generation of boat, ironically, could have been very super competitive in this edition of the race. You know, the reality is at this stage of the race, we don't always know exactly what gear people are left with or what damage they're facing on board. And, you know, I think we've seen that before, that boats mysteriously start to go slower and you realize they're actually dealing with some problem on board. They're not maybe got all their sails. We don't know the condition of the various boats' foils. We make lots of assumptions because if we haven't heard anything, we assume everything's right. But at this stage of the game, he seems totally competitive with Apivia, and one has to imagine there may be issues on one or both of the boats that perhaps are not being spoken about.
Yeah, yeah. So Charlie's, I think, in some ways, been playing the long game. You know, he's just been steady and safe. He's obviously been slightly hampered with the performance on of his boat on port tack, but or on starboard tack, sorry. But now he's getting into this sort of slightly lighter high pressure zone. He should be back on full potential of his boat. Uh, do you think? Do you think his strategy? Do you think he's got it in the mindset to win? I mean, he's clearly a competitive guy.
Listen, he's at the front of Vendée Globe in the final stages. Yeah, for sure, he can win the race, and the same, you know, the same could be applied many times over. But Louis got a depth of experience, perhaps that is going to serve him well in this situation. And he's been at the race finish up against other boats, maybe not in such a competitive position, but you know, he's been here before, and that may serve him well. On the other hand, ignorance is bliss, and the Vendée is like every other race, and you're trying to win the race, and there's no doubt about it that Charlie has winning capability in spades.
Yep, yep. And then leads us on to Boris. You know, right now he's sort of in the middle. His boat appears to be in perfect condition. He's on the latest generation foils. Does he go on the attack, or does he continue with this sort of fairly cool, calm head that he's had pretty much for the whole race?
Yeah, well, it's actually served him really well. And quietly, I think I posted on Facebook a few weeks ago that, well, he could win this. You know, he really could. And I think he has sailed an incredibly canny race. He always seems so composed on his media interviews. He seems very composed. He's very clear about what his boat can do. I think, like you, I think his boat's seems to be in 100% condition, and that's pretty important right now. And as they, you know, depend on what choices they make ahead of them. And I know we're going to look at the routing in a minute, but there's clearly some choices to be made. And from what I see of the latest poll, I see Boris actually just putting his bows squarely in between the two leading boats, and I'm imagining he's going to hedge his bets in between those two and try and see if he can close some gauge from the kind of middle position, which I think is probably what I would do. You know, there's I don't think going right now it would be the right option for him. Going left is going to be slow. So what he's doing is probably what I would do. You know, so I think he's definitely on the attack.
Yep. Okay. Well, let's have a quick look at the tracker. This was the situation where we left off on Monday. They were just really approaching this this sort of cigar-shaped high pressure Azores high, and at the time I thought I quite favoured Louis' position. If we just run it forward, you'll see as they cross through and then pick up that front from the depression that's now moved off our screen, and all started to point their bows towards Les Sables d'Olonne. But Louis been consistently over the last 24 hours posting, sort of low 20 knots, and been just a little bit faster than the other two, and of course is now, I think, within 10 or 12 miles of the lead. Potentially on the next sked may even push into the lead. Clearly his strategy thus far, taking the slightly wider route, always trying to get further north, but being in the west, has paid off.
Yeah, I do wonder if he won't look back and look at his track and wonder if he didn't go a bit too wide. I think there was clearly a very good option. There was a favourable option to get north quickly, and that was his strategy. But in the end, I think this corridor has opened that allows them potentially to cut the corner, maybe even south of the Azores. And that corridor, I think he's seen that, and I think you can see from the sharpness of his turn that he's kind of returned. He's used up his leverage, or used up some of his leverage, but left himself enough that he should be in better pressure. And I think he kind of needs that if he's going to win this race, because on paper, Apivia is the faster boat. So he needs something extra.
Let's just have a look at the forecast and run through. So this is the GFS model. We've got the sort of windy routing on there, which I must admit I'm not 100% believe in, but that was today, lunchtime today. If we go forward 24 hours, this was the point where on Monday I thought the boats in the north should be looking to jibe and get further north of the Azores to pick up this next depression coming across. It looks like the breeze around the St. Helena High is stronger in the current model run, and in fact the routing does want them to now stay on that course, stay south of the Azores, and carry themselves into Cape Finisterre. But the current models are still showing quite a light patch off the Portuguese coast into Cape Finisterre there. So, there still may be some advantage to being in the north of that group. So potentially Louis still holds the cards here if he can maintain that option.
Yeah, I think he's got to maintain that left-hand side leverage. Whatever happens, he's got to protect that. If he was further back, if he was a few miles further behind, I think he might be tempted to take to take that jibe and take the northern option. But he's not. He's really close to the front. It's a matter of a dozen miles. So, the reality of it is he's got too much to lose. So better to stay on the same heading. And if Charlie decides to jibe, well, he'll cross behind. So he'd still have his advantage. He'd be able to jibe to cover, and they could head the way towards the finish like that. But I think it would be quite a bold call, given the weather routing so clearly says you can keep going. I completely agree with you, Conrad, that the routing is taking them very close to Finisterre, and in fact even seems to force its way around the coastline there. And that would make me pretty nervous, because Finisterre is an area of change. And I know in 2004, when we arrived at Finisterre, it was the point where clearly the boat most to the north had the best angle into Le Sable d'Olonne. I was furthest to the south, just south of Jean-le-Cam, and the net result was a 1-2-3, the most northerly boat, the next most northerly boat, and then me.
Yeah.
Yes, my keel fell off, but the reality of it is it probably would have worked out that way anyway. and that's just the way of it. So I see Finisterre as a potential turnaround point, because whatever the model's saying, Finisterre, we know, is an area where things can happen, where the weather can be very localized, and it could cause a turnaround.
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree. You know, we saw on the virtual game, we've seen in repeatedly in previous Vendays. You know, sometimes boats are going almost to the latitude of of Ireland before turning towards Les Sables d'Olonne. You know, it's been quite evident that not good to come into Cape Finisterre. Let's have a quick look at the routing that was on expedition, and I've left the routing that I did on Monday just in for comparison, so you kind of get a sense of how things have changed. The blue routing is today, and clearly it does favour staying south of the Azores, and just jibing, working along this sort of pressure band. But interestingly, when they do get to the to Cape Finisterre, it does get pretty soft. And in that situation,
even quite headed there, huh? You're even quite headed.
Yeah, potentially quite headed. You know, it's certainly looks pretty tricky through there. And if we just run that through a little bit further, you could see you're almost sort of backing into this funny little, you know, light patch. Not a great angle, but there's consistently more breeze in the north, and possibly a slightly better angle in the north. And then after that, it does fill in, but it takes them very close to the Cape. And interestingly, that routing that was done from Monday, it comes in and effectively overtakes the current routing. Now, I know you can't really compare them, but yeah, I still think, you know, keeping some northerly in the course is the right thing to do here.
Yeah, and you know, I think Louis has he's well positioned for that, and that routing you're sailing very deep in that routing, so there are going to be options to go left, and it's about taking the right amount at the right time to be left hand side as you make that final approach. And as you say, the routing's really close. I mean, there's not much in it. The left hand side routing there, the routing further north, almost looks like it's a safer option.
Yeah, it's it's really interesting. I mean, you know, I think Louis played it really smart. In fact, you know, they've all been sailing incredibly well. But yeah, it's wide open. It could be wide open right up until that final Bay of Biscay. But maybe that sort of north to south split could be the 1, 2, 3.
Yep, absolutely. I think it probably will in the end, but they have closed gauge quite a lot the last 24 hours, and you know, Louis wants to watch out he doesn't burn all his benefit just trying to, because there's a massive temptation to try and take the lead of the race, and if you're burning your gauge, you're burning your potential long-term benefit. And there's a danger that you get greedy and you burn all your gauge, but end up sailing on the same line.
Yeah, in a potentially slower boat.
In a potentially slower boat. So I think he has to keep his gauge, and even if he loses a few miles in the short term, just maintain that separation.
That's brilliant. That's really good. Thanks, Mike. That's been really fascinating, and I'm sure for the viewers of this, they're sort of, you know, really helped, you know, sort of understand the various kind of options and strategies for them and what they're going through.
We're going to have a great weekend, Conrad, because we've got not only can we watch this sort of play out, but we'll also watch what's going on in New Zealand play out. So
yeah.
So we've got a lot of good sailing going on, which we're very lucky to be in a sport that has some real serious sport going on, you know.
We certainly are. I mean, absolutely brilliant Vendée Globe, and as you say, the America's Cup has been riveting as well. Let me just finish up. So, my thanks to Mike Golding for joining me today. We're back on Sunday night with a quick update. If you've been enjoying these updates, then please leave a comment below and subscribe to the channel to get notified of the next update. We'll see you on Sunday. Cheers.